Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to this bonus episode of Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. I am super excited to be here tonight with Dr. Ovadia. Hi, Dr. Ovadia.
Hi, Robin. How you doing? It's great to be here.
I'm so happy that you accepted my invitation, and it was so cool to meet you at Hack Your Health in Austin and get a chance to chat briefly with you. And so, really appreciate you being here. You guys, if you don't know Dr. Ovadia is a heart surgeon, and I was so excited to get a chance to meet him. And I want to talk about heart health. If you guys know about my channel, if you watch my channel, you know that one of my passions is for the African American community, and particularly around heart health, because directly in my family, I have so many people that are dealing with heart related issues. And then, of course, all communities are plagued with heart disease. So, Dr. Ovadia, I just want to welcome you and give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. And, Hack Your Health was such a fun event, and it was great to meet you and so many people there. And of course, I share your passion for heart health. My background, I've been a heart surgeon now for over 20 years. I've done over 3,000 heart surgeries. And during much of that time, I myself was a very unhealthy heart surgeon. I had reached the point that I was morbidly obese. I was pre-diabetic, and I recognized that I was going to end up on my own operating table, so to speak. Um, I was also at a loss about what to do about that because I was, I think, doing a pretty good job of following the advice that I had learned to give, eat less, move more, the food pyramid, eating low fat diets. Um, I was doing it. It wasn't working. It wasn't working for me, and it wasn't working for my patients. And thankfully, now, about 8 years ago, I I was, you know, really, fortunate to be introduced to concepts around low carb sugar. My introduction was via Gary Taubes, which I think has been many people's introductions. And little side note, one of the highlights for me recently, I was just at a conference last weekend, and Gary was there. And it was actually the first time I had seen him in person again since seeing him speak at a surgical conference and hearing about this for the first time when he had at that time just written the case against sugar. And, I got to thank him for changing my life personally and professionally, because after hearing Gary talk, I went on a low carb diet. I was able to ultimately lose 100 pounds, was able to reverse my pre-diabetes. And more importantly, I was able to recognize what the true root causes of heart disease are, and have now become passionate about keeping people off the operating table. And so while I continue to work as a heart surgeon, I really want as many people as possible not to end up on the operating table, not to need heart surgery, because it is a mostly preventable disease.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten a lot wrong about why heart disease is so prevalent. And because we've been so focused on the wrong things
Mm.
about what's causing it, that's why we haven't really been able to effectively improve the situation around heart disease. And I know we're going to get into all of that in this conversation.
So you said a couple of really profound things here. The fact that you've done over 3,000 heart surgeries is absolutely astounding. It is absolutely astounding. And then, 8 years ago, that you found a different way of doing things. So I wonder, like, when you first heard about it, how was your skepticism? Because I feel like the skepticism is something that people struggle with. Even I struggled with it when I first heard about like low carb and carnivore. Um, it's just so opposite of what we've been taught. How was your personal skepticism around changing your way of eating?
Well, obviously, coming from a background of, being trained, going through medical school, being trained to be a doctor first, and then being trained to be a heart surgeon in particular, right? The low carb message, the low carb way of eating and living goes very much against the foundational truths that are accepted in the heart disease space.
Right.
And especially, understand the time that I went through medical school, which was in the mid to late 1990s. The cholesterol centric view of heart disease was really reaching its pinnacle. This is the time that statins had become the most commonly prescribed class of medications in the United States. And what's ironic looking back now is I graduate medical school, I start my surgical training, and I reached the point where I needed to decide, what area of surgery I wanted to specialize in. And I chose heart surgery because number one, it was so fascinating to me. The technical aspects of doing heart surgery combined with the physiology of sort of managing heart surgery patients, it just really grabbed my attention, and I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I remember having conversations with my mentors at the time around this decision. And when I told them that I decided I wanted to go into heart surgery, they thought I was crazy. They said, "Do not go into heart surgery. There is going to be nothing for you to do in 10 years. We have, heart disease is going away, right? We have these miracle drugs, and there's going to be nothing left for you to do in 10 years. It's a dead field. Absolutely do not go into heart surgery."
Wow.
And here I am 20 years later, and not only has heart surgery not gone away, it's actually increased. And I'm as busy as ever as a heart surgeon, and now fighting this battle to really, try and refocus that discussion around heart disease. And so bringing it back to my personal dietary choices, and that concept of switching basically from low fat to low carb on a very broad sense, took a lot. But on the other hand, it was easy, right? Because I knew the other side of it wasn't working. I had
Right.
tried the low fat for my entire life up until that point. I have seen the patients doing the same thing. And it was obvious to me at that point that that wasn't working, and I needed to try something else. So, yes, it was difficult. But on the other hand, I kind of intuitively knew, this has a chance to be right because the other thing seemed to be so wrong.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. And I think that sort of wake up call, like I think, and I was reading a little bit of your story online, just the fact that you did all the diets. You did all the, trying to lose weight and losing and gaining weight and all of that kind of thing. And as a physician, you know, um, I just feel like I feel like I would love to see more physicians getting that wake up call, like what we're doing is not working. and and okay, it's time to try something different, because clearly eat less and move more does not work for most people. I mean, I think it for the majority of people, it just doesn't, it's not sustainable. You don't, you can lose weight. Like I know for myself that I've done many diets over the years, and I'm an expert dieter. Like I can do a diet. That is a thing that I can do. But maintaining weight loss was elusive. I was not able to maintain weight loss or maintain, the health related things that I've seen with the carnivore diet. I've never seen before on any other way of eating. So, I'd like to just have you touch a little bit on, like, you talked a little bit about root cause, like what is the true root cause of heart disease, and the fact that, um, during that time when statins were becoming like all the rage, everybody needs to be on a statin, with this heart health and cholesterol hypothesis that was out there. So, can you talk a little bit more about root cause and what really is causing all of this heart disease?
Yeah, so I think it's useful to talk about how the cholesterol hypothesis, the diet heart hypothesis, sort of came to be the accepted explanation for heart disease, right? So, when we talk about heart disease, and we're primarily talking about what's called atherosclerotic heart disease. And what that means is basically plaque building up in the arteries of the heart. And eventually leading to blockages in those arteries that can then, cause damage to the heart attacks, and other, forms of damage to the heart. And that's the most common form of heart disease here in the US, certainly, and worldwide as well. So it's logical, right, to start with the plaque in that situation. And you look at the plaque under the microscope, and you see a lot of this cholesterol, right? And so it makes sense to say, okay, this is a cholesterol problem. And the way to deal with this is to figure out, how do we get rid of the cholesterol? And the error there is not asking why the cholesterol got there in the first place, right? Because cholesterol is a ubiquitous substance in our bodies. We cannot exist without cholesterol. Cholesterol makes up the structure of our cells. Cholesterol plays a role in so many different processes in our body. It's part of our immune system. It's a precursor for many essential hormones in our body, and it plays very important roles in our body. So, the right question to be asking is not, how do we get rid of the cholesterol? The right question is, what caused the cholesterol to get, stuck in our blood vessels in the first place? And that leads us to the lining of the blood vessels, what we call the endothelium. And we know, again, this is not a controversial fact. It's just not thought about by most doctors, right? Because most doctors have been taught that the only thing you need to think about regarding heart disease is getting rid of the cholesterol in the body, essentially, and that's going to eliminate heart disease. And instead, we should be thinking about what caused the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessel, to be damaged, because it's only a damaged endothelium that then allows this cholesterol, this plaque building process to begin. And the things that damage the lining of our blood vessels are, I would say, the most common thing in our world today is high blood sugar, what we call insulin resistance. Um, there are other important contributors, things like smoking, and even things like stress, which have been shown to affect the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessel. But if we focus, on what the most prominent root cause issue is, it's damage to the blood vessels because of what we call insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is what allows these high blood sugar spikes that are damaging the blood vessel wall. It turns out that insulin resistance also has other effects on the cholesterol itself that makes the cholesterol then more likely to get stuck in the blood vessel where it doesn't belong. And so everything, in my mind, really leads us back first and foremost to insulin resistance. And that's why I believe that the way that we're going to have the best impact on heart disease is to educate people about insulin resistance, what to do about it, how to reverse it. And, again, that primarily is then going to be diet and lifestyle interventions.
This is so interesting because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I may not, I don't have diabetes, My doctor has not said that I have diabetes. I don't have a problem with blood sugar.
Hmm.
And then also maybe I'm very thin and I don't have a problem. I don't have a weight issue. I don't have a weight issue. But can you talk a little bit more about insulin resistance and it's not the same as having diabetes or being like pre-diabetic or something like that. It's something that you can't even see from the outside, right?
Yeah, for the most part, very much true. And, while, diabetes, pre-diabetes are end results of insulin resistance, while obesity certainly makes it more likely for you to be insulin resistant, you can have none of those things. You can be, normal weight, not diabetic, not pre-diabetic, and you can still be insulin resistant. And the other important thing to understand here is that if you have gotten to the point that you're diabetic, we're talking about type 2 diabetes,
Mhm.
or if your doctor has told you you're pre-diabetic, again, on your way to type 2 diabetes, it means that you have already been insulin resistant for a long period of time, maybe as much as 5 to 10 years. And that's the other power of looking for insulin resistance, right? Because if we detect that early, we can prevent that other stuff. We can reverse that other stuff later on, but it's always better to prevent it in the first place from happening. And so, again, this is why we need to refocus on insulin resistance. And if there's one kind of big takeaway that people get from this session, it's, ask your doctor, am I insulin resistant? Um, the patient, don't even need to fully understand what that is, how to test for it. Now, I believe in empowering people to understand what it is and how to test for it, because your doctor may not know. And this is where you need the extra information, and you need to be able to say to them, I want a fasting insulin level. I want maybe something like what's called a lipoprotein insulin resistance score, an LPIR score. Um, if you have more basic information, you can look at your triglycerides and your HDL. And that ratio, your triglycerides divided by your HDL, can give you indications about whether or not you might be insulin resistant. Besides triglycerides and HDL, there are three other basic markers that we look at of metabolic health. And these are going to be your waist circumference, your blood pressure, and your fasting blood glucose level. And you can take all of those, and you can go to my website for free, ifixhearts.com. Right on the front page, you can take the quiz, which is basically just plugging in those 5 numbers, and that will tell you whether or not you are, whether or not you are metabolically healthy. Metabolically healthy meaning that you don't have insulin resistance. So, those are the simple steps that people can take to start to figure this out.
Mhm.
And what I can tell you is the vast majority of people with heart disease, some studies have shown as much as 95%, and at least 70 to 80% of patients that show up with atherosclerotic heart disease, if you test for it properly, they have insulin resistance. And we have to contrast that against, again, we're told that cholesterol is the main cause of heart disease. When you look at patients who show up with heart disease, only half of them have elevated cholesterol levels. Um,
Mm.
so that tells you, it really doesn't tell us much. It's a 50-50 shot, right? Whether or not your cholesterol is elevated when you show up with heart disease. But like I said, it's almost 100% that you have insulin resistance when you show up with heart disease. So that's the power of insulin resistance. And that's why we need to focus on insulin resistance if we're going to have a true impact on heart disease.
So what are the methods of eliminating or getting rid of insulin resistance?
Yeah, that's the next great question to ask. And diet, what you're eating is first and foremost. And we know that it is uh, high carbohydrates, high sugar foods that promote insulin resistance. We also have more evidence accumulating that processed fats vegetable and seed oils contribute to insulin resistance. And I tell people processed food in general is really what drives insulin resistance. Eating whole, real food, eating things like meat, animal products, and even fruits and vegetables are not going to cause you to become insulin resistant. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat there. Once you're insulin resistant, right, your body is no longer able to process carbohydrates of any form. So the fruits and
Mm.
the vegetables can become problematic. I admit, and this is always something that gets sort of, uh, you know, uh, uh, fought about on social media, right? Everyone says, well, fruit doesn't cause insulin resistance. And that's probably true. Fruit in and of itself is not going to cause you to become insulin resistant. But once you're insulin resistant, fruit becomes a very problematic food because it is a high sugar food. So you have to figure out where you are. And you have to, by default, assume that you are insulin resistant, because these are the scary statistics we have today. That, you know, depending on, there have been a couple of studies looking at this recently. One said 88%, one said 93% of adults in the United States are not in good metabolic health, meaning that they have some degree of insulin resistance. So you kind of have to assume that you're insulin resistant unless you have tested for it and demonstrated that you're not.
Okay. So I'm thinking about kids because I don't know if you know this, Dr. Ovadia, but I have 11 grandkids. And
Awesome.
so, I'm thinking about kids. And I mean, this insulin resistance problem is starting younger and younger. I think even little kids have this problem now, right?
Yeah, very much so. We are seeing a alarming rise in the incidence of type 2 diabetes. And again, type 2 diabetes is an end result of insulin resistance in teenagers and, even younger. Kids 7, 8, 9 year olds are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And this is very scary. Because what I see on my end, again, going back to my role as a heart surgeon, when I started my career as a heart surgeon 20 years ago, I operated primarily on 60 and 70-year-olds, and I had some 50-year-olds. It was incredibly rare to see, a 40-year-old on my table was unheard of back then.
Mhm.
And now I'm routinely operating on 40-year-olds, and I'm even seeing some 30-year-olds showing up on my operating table with atherosclerotic heart disease. And the reason that is because, it takes a couple of decades, right, after you become insulin resistant for the heart disease to build up enough that you're going to end up on my operating table. And so
Right.
you do the math. If, someone shows up at 30, that probably means they've been insulin resistant since they were a teenager or even younger. And that's a real problem that we have to confront. And I do believe that, our youngest generation, our children, our teenagers are really where we should be focusing these efforts
Yes.
because they seem to be even more prone to this. The environment that they're growing up in, right? You and I had the advantage um, that processed food wasn't all that common, right? When we grew up, it was introduced later in our life. These kids are now getting processed food literally from birth, right? Baby formula,
Mhm.
um, has high sugar and, vegetable and seed oils in it. It is a processed food as far as I'm concerned. And these kids are being exposed to it from birth. And that's probably a large part of why we're seeing this develop so early now.
Yeah, I was talking with someone recently, and they were talking about the fact that, and I know this to be true, like when I was in school, there were very few overweight kids in my group. We all played outside. Kids hardly play outside anymore. That's one thing too, but we all played outside and there were very few. It was rare to see somebody that was overweight like in elementary school. When I was in elementary school, I didn't see a lot of overweight children. And it is true. You know, what I see with my grandkids too is that the processed food is it's just everywhere. Everything is processed. Um, and it's highly addictive. And so that's what the kids want, you know. They want the Takis and the Cheetos and all that kind of, you know, the junk food that tastes so good. So let's go back just a second because you were talking a little bit about what people should be eating to get rid of, eliminate, address insulin resistance. And you said basically, if you're not insulin resistant, then you could be eating meat and vegetables, anything that's like not processed food. You also mentioned, though, processed fats and seed oils. So, can you talk a little bit about what the issue is with the seed oils? Because I know a lot of people are still using vegetable oil, they're using canola oil, they're using, you know, all of the seed oils, Crisco, and all
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yeah, so the issue with the seed oils really seems to be at a mitochondrial level, right? So the
Mm,
mitochondria, those are the power plants of our cells. And, you know, when we eat, that food is converted into energy by the mitochondria. And the problem seems to be that these vegetable and seed oils, which are very high in these polyunsaturated fatty acids, that our mitochondria, our cells, aren't able to process well. And they basically break the cellular machinery and cause insulin resistance. Now, you know, there's a lot of debate around this, right? It's kind of hard to tease out the effects of sugar versus the effects of these, you know, highly processed oils because you know they've kind of grown up in they've increased in the food supply together, right? It's pretty rare that you get one without the other. Yes, people are cooking, you know, with the vegetable and seed oil, but when they're cooking with that, they're usually cooking high carbohydrate foods. And of course, when you look at processed foods in general, you know, you go down all those aisles of the supermarket and all this boxed and bagged processed food, you almost always see those two things combined.
right.
So that is a real problem that, again, we need to face, and trying to figure out which one is causing all the damage becomes problematic.
Right.
And Robin, I'm going to have to ask for a pause for 1 second,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because you're still dealing with a practicing heart surgeon.
Oh,
Got to take
yes.
a call from the hospital.
Absolutely. Certainly, certainly. So, you guys, I hope that you guys are enjoying this interview with Dr. Ovadia. He is a heart surgeon, so you know we got to deal with the people calling him while we're here. But I just want to say hi to some of you guys while he's taking his call. I really appreciate everybody being here. So Jay is here. Hey Jay, thank you so much for coming by. And then Sharon is here. Hey Sharon, so glad that you are here. And Melissa, hi, girlfriend. I haven't seen you in a while. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And thank you for the sweet compliment. I appreciate that very much. Melissa says, hit the like button. So let's get the message out there. I agree with that. If you have not already hit the like button, please go ahead and do that. Hey, you're back.
Hey, yeah, and so heart surgery life. I'm gonna have to cut this a little short.
Yep,
Go
no
deal with
problem.
something. But
Yeah,
great talking with you, and we can certainly we'll schedule a part two to this so we can
absolutely.
finish the conversation.
Sounds good. Go take care of business. And I know that people are counting on you. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Ovadia. We'll get you back on the show.
All right, sounds good,
All
Robin.
right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So sorry, you guys, that we had to cut our show short, but let me just say a few quick hellos again. So Krishna is here. Krishna, thank you so much for being here. I know that you're from Dr. Ovadia's ex. So, and I agree with this, that folks don't talk about insulin resistance. As a matter of fact, I've never even heard of it in my doctor's office. So this is something that we want to make sure, what Dr. Ovadia was saying is ask your doctor, am I insulin resistant? This is a critical question to make sure that you're asking. He said that some of the things that you can ask for are a fasting insulin level, an LPIR score, and then your triglycerides to HDL ratio. Another thing that you can do to tell if you're insulin resistant is check out your waist circumference, if your blood pressure is high, and then you can also do a fasting blood glucose test to check and see if you are insulin resistant. If you are insulin resistant, then you are more likely to have heart disease. He said that half of the patients that he sees have high cholesterol, but nearly 100% of the patients that have a heart disease issue have insulin resistance. So that is really definitely a huge factor in having heart disease and heart issues. I had a lot more questions for Dr. Ovadia, but we're going to get him back on the show. I know how important his work is. He said that he's done over 3,000 heart surgeries. And let me just share his, I'm going to share his channel for anybody that has not heard about him or doesn't know of Dr. Ovadia. I'm going to share his channel for you guys. And then I know that a lot of you guys are from his ex. And so Dr. Ovadia wrote a book. It's called Stay Off My Operating Table. And this is a great book. You guys can pick it up on Amazon or any of your, booksellers. Check it out. But he also has a podcast. It's called the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. And Dr. Ovadia is so very passionate about fixing hearts. He wants you to have your heart fixed so you do not have to go onto the operating table. And so one of the things that he says on his, and I'll show you guys this as well. It says, he was a morbidly obese heart surgeon. Yes, you read that right. Through high school, college, med school, and surgical training, he followed the U.S. dietary guidelines for both diet and exercise. Yet nothing he did took the weight off. Each day in the operating theater, he would split open the chests of people just like himself. He was heading for the operating table and knew he had to find solutions that worked. In 2016, he finally found a way to lose 100 pounds and keep it off. Now, in addition to doing heart surgery, he helps people just like himself get healthy, lose the weight, and keep it off. So it says, now Dr. Philip Ovadia is a rebel MD who works against his own financial interests to keep people off his operating table. And so I'm really thankful that I had a chance to talk to him tonight. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys being here. Let me also share Dr. Ovadia's website. And normally I would do this with him here, but we'll share it anyway. So it is going to be this one. So this is Ovadia Heart Health. He said, I did everything right, but I was still fat. Does anybody else feel this way? You've been following the nutritional guidelines. You've been doing everything that they told you to do. You've been trying to move more. You've been trying to eat less. You've been doing low fat. You've been eating margarine, all the things. You stopped eating fried food. You stopped eating meat, but you still can't keep your weight off. And I think that this is my story. And this is also Dr. Ovadia's story, that he struggled with his weight, even though he tried to do all the right things. And I think that that's what we all try to do, is we try to follow the guidelines. But you can see here his picture that he has on his website, that he was overweight and he struggled with that. And so there are other options out here. And that's why I wanted to talk to him, because what he's saying is, if you are insulin resistant, you might have to cut out the fruits and vegetables to get rid of your insulin resistance, because you're already insulin resistant. And so that's why I'm a carnivore. And I think Dr. Ovadia is pretty much meat-based carnivore. And cut out the processed foods. If you're going to eat any kind of if you're going to eat anything, eat whole, real food, right? Eat whole, real food. So, try to eliminate and cut out the processed food. As he said, a low carb diet is the way to go if you have insulin resistance. So I just want to encourage everybody to check with your doctor. Do this test. I think somebody posted his link. I'm going to just put it up here on the screen here. Let's see, where is it? Right here. Let's see, we'll pop this up. Right here. Thank you, Krishna. HTTPS with the slashes, ifixhearts.com quiz. Go out there and take Dr. Ovadia's quiz and see, see. Check it out. See what you can find out here. Joy's saying it took a year for my doctor to order the fasting insulin test. That's tough. I mean, sometimes we have to be our own advocates, right? And say, this is what I need you to do for me. The doctor is working for you. So, that's a struggle. Like, the fasting insulin is going to help you determine if you're insulin resistant. And so many of us are. I did have a question out here. Leah, aloha. I saw your question. I had it starred. We'll make sure that next time Ovadia is back, that we get this question answered. But your question was, once insulin resistant, can too much protein spike your glucose when on a carnivore diet? I'm not a doctor. I can't answer the question. But we'll make sure that that Dr. Ovadia gets this question and has an opportunity to answer it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me, but we've been on for about 37 minutes, and I'm gonna let y'all go because we'll get Dr. Ovadia back. I'll work with his admin and we'll get him back and make sure that we get. I have like 2 whole pages of questions for him, so we only made it through a couple of them. So we'll get him back. All right, you guys, if you have not subscribed to Dr. Ovadia's channel, his podcast, please make sure you do that. It's I Fix Hearts by Dr. Ovadia. Julia's here. Hi, Julia. Julia says, was vegan, even had gotten okay with the fact that I was probably going to just remain fat, but I was not okay with the fact that I was going to remain sick. Hence my motivation. Thank you for all you do, Robin. So here's the thing. I've been carnivore for 18 months. And I'll tell you guys the difference that I have, right? So I had IBS. I was constipated constantly. I had severe eczema, particularly on my face and on my hands. It was very, very bad. I had severe seasonal allergies every season of the year, all year round. I had extreme anxiety to the point where I was like not going to be able to leave my house. And I went to the doctor and said, hey, doc, I'm going to need you to put me on something because I'm not going to be able to function anymore. I had depression. I had on and on, sleep apnea, just, on and on with the things that I've dealt with around my health. And since going carnivore 18 months ago, it's a drastic night and day difference. I saw my daughter was in here somewhere. I'm like, my daughter can tell you, like, my skin was awful. It was so bad. I was taking allergy pills twice a day. Like, you're only supposed to take it once a day, every day. I was taking it twice a day, plus Benadryl every single day. And I don't have to do that anymore. So it's just, I don't want to be sick. So yes, I feel like, that, vegetables maybe have their place in medicines and things like that. For me, the carnivore lifestyle works perfectly. I love it. As a matter of fact, I'll give you guys this testimony. I went on a cruise last week And I had some plant products, I'll call it. I had some mint. I had quite a bit of mint because I was doing these mint drinks, and my anxiety came back raging through the roof. Like I could not, to the point where I could not move forward. I could not move my feet forward. Um, and and I had not dealt with that in 18 months since I started the carnivore way of eating. So we'll get Dr. Ovadio back. We'll talk more about what should a person that has heart health issues be doing. As he said, cholesterol is not the primary culprit in heart disease. So that was really, really profound, that statement that he made about it. So, you guys, there's 341 of you guys here. I hate to drop it off, but I'm going to go ahead and conclude. I hope you will come back when we get Dr. Ovadia back, and I will see you guys next time. All right. Good night, everybody.